Fantasy football, a game or a business? Have you ever experienced having the entire weight of a team on your shoulders? If you've ever operated a business or played fantasy football, then you likely have. You may have never thought about it this way, but fantasy football is a lot like operating a business. I've been playing fantasy football for over 10 years, and throughout my time, I've researched and learned many different business skills from fantasy football that I still use in my everyday work life. Business skills are an extremely important skill to have at your disposal at any time, at any job. And today we'll discuss how playing fantasy football can teach you the ins and outs of operating a business. Fantasy football may be a game, but it's a game that requires skill and strategy. Strategizing is arguably the most draining part of operating a business and operating a fantasy football team. Developing a budget and strategizing for the upcoming season are critical in assembling your masterpiece of a team. Now it's draft day, the most exciting time of year for a fantasy football owner, and you're going to spend hours going through players and deciding who you think is going to have a big year and who's going to flop. The first step to solving this dilemma is developing a budget. Figuring out who you want is hard enough, and deciding how much they're worth to you is a whole other ballgame. Players are given a salary on draft day, and your team has a limited amount of money to spend when drafting players. And when you draft them, it's a bidding process, so the highest bidder gets the player. TheFantasyFootballers.com describes this process as that you need to start by building your budget, and your budget is the first critical step to getting on the right track to avoiding unnecessary spending. Like any business, you need to have a well thought out budget to be successful, and without this, you're destined for disaster. During the season, you're given a budget for adding new players to your team as well. So every week, you're able to pick from a pool of players who are not on anyone's team and possibly add them to your team. These players are also run through a bidding process, so you're given a preset amount of money that you're allowed to spend throughout the entire season. You need to decide how much each of these players are worth to you and your bids. Just like the real world, the employer that offers the most money has the best chance of getting that employee and adding them to their team. Projecting how players will perform each week can be a hair-pulling process. You have a lineup of 15 players and you're only allowed to play 8 of them. This could be compared to a manager having to pick from their pool of employees and having to decide who they're going to assign to the major project. That's goal is to eliminate a crisis that's been boiling within a company for a long time. This can be a difficult process for any manager. They want to ensure that they assemble the best team possible to get the job done right. Now, money is on the line with both fantasy football and a business, and failure for both of these means that you're losing money. I don't know about you, but I lost $1 in a vending machine the other day, and I'm still not very happy about it. Once the week passes, you will evaluate your team's performance based on their projections and how they played. Go figure, you had high expectations for somebody and they let you down. Like any job, if you consistently underperform, you won't retain your job very long. When players consistently underperform in fantasy football, you have the option to remove them from your team and replace them with a player that you think can better support your team's goal of winning a championship and the prize money. A company often has to make these types of decisions as well. If an employee is consistently underperforming, they will be let go. Start with Hatch.com states that you need someone that can help your team achieve its goals, which rings true for both fantasy football and operating a business. Now, having a budget and strategizing is a must for any business and fantasy football owner. However, these two items alone are not enough. There comes a time when decisions have to be made, and you have to be capable of making the best decision possible for your business or your fantasy football team. When operating a business and playing fantasy football, you will have to make many different kinds of critical decisions. Adapting to the unexpected and making deals are two skills that are required when operating a business and playing fantasy football. To start, you have to be able to adapt to the unexpected situations that you will encounter throughout the season. During the fantasy football season, players will get hurt, they will need to be replaced. These injuries are always unexpected, and finding timely, sufficient replacements are difficult, if not impossible at times. The players that are available to choose from in the free agency are slim. Most players that are available are low performance players. Otherwise, they'd be on someone's team already. If you had a star player go down with an injury, good luck trying to find someone worthy to replace him. Compare this to having a senior member of your workforce going down with an unexpected back injury. The manager is now tasked with finding a replacement to fulfill this critical role, while this replacement is nowhere near the credentials that originally filled this position. Another situation you are destined to face while playing fantasy football, that things do not always work out the way you originally planned. When the season started, you felt like you assembled a masterpiece of a team. Now it's halfway through the season, and your dreams might have just come crashing down on you. When this happens, the best fantasy football owners are able to efficiently adapt and recover. As a business manager, it's critical that you're able to adapt to the unexpected circumstances that you will encounter. Trades can be the most exciting yet nerve-wracking part of fantasy football. Like any trade, it's a negotiation. Trades are when you get to think about the possibility of adding a new player to your team. This can become very stressful when the trade deadline is rapidly arising. Fantasy football owners will be scrambling to find the missing gem to put to their team and to put them over the top. When developing a trade with a fellow fantasy football owner, you must act if you are a sales manager, because you actually are. You must be able to convince the other member of the trade that the very players you are trying to give away are valuable and why they're the perfect fit for them. When working to close a big sales deal, a sales manager must work on fulfilling the needs of the customer, or else the deal will flop. BleacherReport.com states that when working out a trade, you must focus on the positions of need for both parties. If you are able to overcome the unexpected and seal the deal with negotiations, you will be far ahead of your peers. Today we have discussed several key points of operating a business and playing fantasy football. Strategizing and adapting and negotiating are very useful skills that you can develop while playing fantasy football, and they will lead into your business career. Next time fantasy football season comes around, if you feel like learning some key business operational skills, give me a call. I'd be more than happy to take your money too.